Dr. Marcus Hale slammed his office door so hard the glass rattled. His face twisted with rage as he jabbed his finger at the exhausted nurse standing before him. "You think you can practice medicine in my emergency room? You're nothing but a glorified waitress with a stethoscope." His voice dripped with contempt as Emma Walker, 16 hours into her shift, swayed on her feet, her scrubs stained with blood from the 12 patients she'd just saved alone. Behind that locked door, while an industrial explosion sent 40 victims flooding into St. Bethany Medical Center, he'd been on the phone with his lawyer, ignoring every code blue, every desperate call for help. But what this arrogant doctor didn't know was that standing in his ER was a woman who'd already survived the worst night of her life 8 years ago, and tonight a ghost from her past was about to walk through those doors and call her by a name she thought she'd buried forever: Phoenix. Before we dive into this incredible true story, please hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Stay with me until the very end, because you won't believe what happens when the SEAL Admiral arrives. And comment below with your city name so I can see how far this story travels. Now let's begin. Emma Walker's hand trembled as she pushed through the emergency room doors at 11:47 p.m. Her car keys still clutched in her palm. She'd made it all the way to the parking lot, all the way to freedom. The night air had touched her face for exactly 12 seconds before her phone erupted with Diane's panicked voice. "Emma, don't you dare get in that car." She could hear the sirens in the background of the call. Not one, not two, a symphony of emergency vehicles screaming toward St. Bethany Medical Center. "Diane, I just worked a double. I can't." Greystone chemical plant exploded. 40 injured, maybe more. Diane's voice cracked. Half the night shift called out sick. Food poisoning from that potluck. "Emma, we have 3 nurses for the entire ER. 3. Emma closed her eyes, her feet throbbed. Her lower back felt like someone had driven nails through her spine. She was 41 years old and she'd been on her feet for 16 hours straight. "I'm coming." She didn't remember walking back inside. One moment she was in the parking lot, the next she was tying fresh scrubs, her 3rd set of the day. Her hands moved automatically, muscle memory from 2 decades of nursing. But something felt different tonight. Something heavy pressed against her chest, making it hard to breathe. The first ambulance arrived at 11:52 p.m. "Female 62, second-degree burns across 40% of her body," the paramedics shouted as they wheeled the gurney through the bay doors. Beep. Dropping, "She's going into shock." Emma ran to the trauma bay, her exhaustion evaporating as adrenaline flooded her system. The woman's screams filled the room, raw and animal. Burns covered her arms, her chest, parts of her face. The smell hit Emma like a physical blow. Burned flesh, chemicals, something toxic and wrong. "Get me the burn protocol," Emma called out. "Someone page Dr. Hale now." Young nurse Jenny stood frozen in the corner, her face white as paper. "Jenny, snap out of it. I need you here." Emma's voice cut through the chaos. "Get me saline morphine and prep for intubation." The woman grabbed Emma's wrist with surprising strength, her eyes wild with terror. "My husband, John, he was right next to me." "Where's John?" "Ma'am, I need you to stay calm. We're going to help you, but I need you to let go of my arm." "Where is John?" Emma's heart cracked. She knew that desperation. She'd lived it. 8 years ago, she'd been the one screaming questions nobody could answer. The second ambulance arrived at 11:58 p.m. Male 57, severe lacerations, possible internal bleeding. The paramedic's face was grim. "He keeps asking for Maria." Emma's stomach dropped. John and Maria, married 40 years according to the wedding band on the man's bloody finger. "Put him in Bay 2, Emma ordered. "Diane, stay with Maria, keep her stable." Emma sprinted to Bay 2. John's abdomen was rigid, distended. Internal bleeding, probably splenic rupture, maybe liver damage. He needed surgery. He needed it 10 minutes ago. "Where's Dr. Hale?" Emma demanded. "His office," Jenny said. "Doors closed." Emma's jaw clenched. She grabbed the phone and dialed his extension. It rang and rang and rang. "Son of a..." She slammed the phone down. "Get me an ultrasound machine, now." The 3rd ambulance arrived at 12:04 a.m. Then the 4th, then the 5th. 40 victims, Diane had said. 40 people who'd been working the night shift at Greystone, probably thinking about going home to their families, probably counting down the minutes until midnight. Now they were broken, bleeding, dying. Emma moved between trauma bays like a ghost, her hands steady even as her mind screamed. A 23-year-old man with a piece of metal embedded in his thigh, a woman with chemical burns in her lungs gasping for air, a teenager, maybe 17, unconscious with a skull fracture. "I need Dr. Hale," Emma shouted into the hallway. "Someone get him out here." No response. At 12:17 a.m., Emma made her first impossible decision. The man in Bay 3 was crashing. His oxygen saturation plummeted. His airway was compromised. He needed to be intubated immediately or he'd die. And Dr. Marcus Hale was nowhere to be found. Emma had intubated patients before years ago during her deployment as a Navy nurse, but that was in a field hospital. That was war. This was a civilian ER, and she was a nurse, not a doctor. If she intubated this man without a physician's order, she could lose her license. She could face criminal charges. The monitor screamed. The man's lips turned blue. Emma grabbed the laryngoscope. "Jenny, I need you to document everything. Timestamp every action. You understand?" Jenny nodded, her hands shaking as she pulled up the electronic chart. Emma positioned the man's head, opened his mouth, slid the blade in with practiced precision. She could see the vocal cords. She threaded the tube through, inflated the cuff, attached the bag valve mask. His oxygen saturation started climbing. 72, 78, 85. Emma wanted to collapse. Instead, she moved to Bay 4. At 12:31 a.m., the elderly woman in Bay 1 arrested. "Code Blue, Bay 1, Code Blue." Diane's voice carried over the intercom. Emma ran. Maria, the burn victim who'd been asking for John, had flatlined. The monitor showed a straight line, that horrible endless tone that meant death was winning. Emma jumped onto the bed, locked her hands together, started compressions. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted in her head, pushed down hard enough to crack ribs, forced Maria's heart to beat manually. "Charge the defibrillator to 200, Emma commanded. Jenny fumbled with the machine. "Clear." Maria's body jerked. The line stayed flat. Again, 300. "Clear." Nothing. Emma kept compressing. Her arms burned. Sweat poured down her face. "Come on, Maria, come on. John's waiting for you. Don't you dare leave him." "Emma, it's been 8 minutes, Diane said softly. "Maybe we should—" "No, charge to 360, clear." This time the line jumped. A blip, then another, then a rhythm. Maria was back. Emma climbed off the bed, her legs nearly giving out. She glanced at the clock. 12:39 a.m. She'd been back in the ER for 52 minutes. It felt like 52 hours. Where the hell is Dr. Hale? The question hung in the air unanswered. At 12:45 a.m., Emma finally stormed to his office. She didn't knock. She threw the door open. Dr. Marcus Hale sat behind his desk, his phone pressed to his ear, his face red with anger. Not from the emergency, from whatever conversation he was having. "Don't care what the board says, I want this handled by morning or—" He looked up, saw Emma standing in his doorway. "I'll call you back." "We have 40 patients from a mass casualty event," Emma said, her voice dangerously quiet. "I've intubated one, resuscitated another, stabilized 12, and you're in here on the phone." Dr. Hale stood slowly. He was a tall man, mid-50s, with the kind of arrogance that came from 30 years of being called doctor. He straightened his white coat, which was pristine, unstained, like he hadn't been anywhere near the carnage filling his emergency room. "Nurse Walker, I don't appreciate your tone." "I don't appreciate dying patients, Dr. Hale." His eyes narrowed. "You intubated a patient without my authorization. He was dying. You performed a medical procedure outside your scope of practice. I saved his life. You violated hospital protocol." His voice rose, spittle flying. "You have any idea what kind of liability you've created, what kind of lawsuit you've opened us up to?" Emma stared at him, really looked at him, and in that moment she understood. Dr. Marcus Hale didn't care about the patients. He cared about himself, about his reputation, about his comfortable position at St. Bethany Medical Center where he could collect a paycheck without getting his hands dirty. "Get out there and do your job," Emma said. "Excuse me. You're the attending physician. Act like it." Dr. Hale's face turned purple. "How dare you speak to me that way? I could have you fired. I could have your license revoked." "Then do it." Emma turned to leave. But do it after you save some lives. She walked out, leaving the door open behind her. Her whole body shook, but not from fear, from rage, from exhaustion, from the weight of carrying an entire emergency room on her shoulders, while the man who was supposed to lead them hid in his office playing politics. At 1:03 a.m., the worst case arrived. Incoming male 19 traumatic brain injury, GCS of 5. The paramedics were already doing CPR as they rushed through the doors. He's herniating. Emma's blood ran cold. A GCS of 5 meant this boy was barely alive. Herniating meant his brain was swelling, pushing against his skull, cutting off blood flow. He needed a neurosurgeon. He needed an operating room. He needed miracles Emma couldn't provide. But she tried anyway. Get him in base 6. I need a CT scan, stat page of neurosurgery. They transferred the boy to the bed. He was young, so young. Couldn't have been more than 20. His face was swollen purple, unrecognizable. His parents would be here soon, Emma thought. They'd want to see him. They'd want to hold his hand and tell him everything would be okay. Emma had been that parent once. Sort of. She'd been the wife standing in a different hospital in a different state 8 years ago when they told her Daniel was gone. That her husband, her Marine, her entire world had taken his own life in a VA hospital bathroom because the war that ended for everyone else had never ended for him. Emma Neurosurgery says they're 30 minutes out, Diane reported. The on-call surgeon is stuck in traffic. 30 minutes. This boy didn't have 30 seconds. Emma looked at the monitor. His intracranial pressure was climbing. 40, 50, 60. Normal was 5 to 15. At this level, his brain was being crushed inside his own skull. He needs a burr hole, Emma whispered, or a ventriculostomy. Emma, that's surgery. You can't. I know what it is. Emma's mind raced. She'd seen it done. Twice. Once in Afghanistan when a Marine took shrapnel to the head. Once in a training simulation. The procedure was brutal, but simple drill through the skull, insert a drain, release the pressure. Give the brain room to swell without killing the patient. But she was a nurse. She wasn't qualified. She wasn't authorized. If this boy died on her table, she'd go to prison. If she didn't try, he'd die anyway. Get me a ventriculostomy kit, Emma said. And get Dr. Hale out here now. Jenny ran for the supply room. Diane grabbed the phone. Emma stood over the boy, watching his pupils dilate, fixed and dilated. The sign of irreversible brain damage. She had minutes, maybe less. Dr. Hale appeared in the doorway. Finally. His face was still red, his jaw tight. What's the, he saw the boy and stopped. Oh, he needs a ventriculostomy. His ICP is through the roof. Where's neurosurgery? 30 minutes out. Dr. Hale shook his head. Then we wait. He'll be dead in 10 minutes. That's not my problem, Nurse Walker. I'm not a neurosurgeon. I'm not authorized to perform that procedure. Emma felt something inside her snap. Then authorize me. What? I can do it. I've seen it done. I know the landmarks, the technique. Dr. Hale laughed, actually laughed. You've lost your mind. You're a nurse. You're not performing brain surgery in my ER. So we let him die. We wait for the specialist. He doesn't have time to wait. That's not my problem. Dr. Hale's voice echoed through the ER. Every nurse, every tech, every conscious patient heard him. I'm not risking my license for some kid who's probably already brain dead. You want to play hero, Nurse Walker? Go ahead. But when his parents sue, when the hospital board investigates, when you're standing in front of a judge trying to explain why you perform surgery without a medical license, don't come crying to me. He walked away, just turned around and walked back to his office. Emma stood there frozen. The monitor beeped its warning. The boy's heart rate dropped. 80, 70, 60. Jenny returned with the ventriculostomy kit, her face streaked with tears. Emma, what do we do? Emma looked at the kit, looked at the boy, looked at the hallway where Dr. Hale had disappeared. She thought about Daniel, about the night she lost him, about standing in that hospital screaming at the doctors, begging them to explain why nobody had seen the signs, why nobody had helped him, why nobody had saved him. She thought about this boy's mother, who was probably driving to the hospital right now, terrified, praying, making bargains with God. Emma opened the kit. Document everything, she told Jenny. Every single step, timestamps, vitals, my verbal orders, everything. Emma, you could lose your license. Then I lose it. Emma pulled on sterile gloves. But I'm not losing this kid. At 1:27 a.m. Emma Walker, a trauma nurse with 20 years of experience and absolutely no legal authority to do what she was about to do, picked up a scalpel and made an incision in a dying boy's skull. Her hands didn't shake. Not once. She found the landmarks she'd memorized years ago. She used the drill carefully, precisely. She felt the resistance change as the bit broke through bone. She inserted the catheter, watching the pressure gauge drop as cerebrospinal fluid drained into the collection bag. The boy's vital signs stabilized. His heart rate climbed back to 80. His oxygen saturation improved. Emma had saved his life. She'd also probably ended her career. But as she stood there, hands covered in blood, surrounded by chaos, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in 8 years. Purpose. Not the numb, going through the motions purpose of surviving each day. Real purpose. The kind that made her remember why she became a nurse in the first place. The kind Daniel had believed in. At 1:52 a.m., the neurosurgeon finally arrived. Dr. Patricia Chen took one look at the ventriculostomy, checked the placement, reviewed the vitals, and turned to Emma with wide eyes. "Who placed this?" Emma lifted her chin. "I did." Dr. Chen was quiet for a long moment. "Perfect placement. Textbook technique. You saved his life." "I'm a nurse. I know what you are." Dr. Chen smiled slightly. "And I know what you did. When this is all over, we're going to have a very long conversation." Emma nodded. She expected the conversation would involve lawyers. At 2:15 a.m., the relief team from County General finally arrived. 6 nurses, 3 doctors, flooding into St. Bethany like a rescue squad. The senior physician, Dr. Raymond Torres, took one look at the organized chaos, the stabilized patients, the exhausted skeleton crew, and whistled low. "Who's been running this show?" Every nurse pointed at Emma. Dr. Torres walked over to where Emma was checking IVs on a chemical burn patient. "I'm Dr. Torres. You the charge nurse tonight?" "No, sir. That's Diane. I was just—" Emma trailed off. What was she helping? Helping. Dr. Torres glanced around at the 12 patients in various stages of treatment. "How many came in?" 43 total. We lost 2 in the field before they got here. We've stabilized or treated 41. With how many staff? 3 nurses, 1 tech. Emma didn't mention Dr. Hale, didn't need to. His absence spoke for itself. Dr. Torres shook his head slowly. "That's impossible." "It happened anyway." "Where's your attending?" Emma pointed toward the office. Dr. Torres's expression darkened. Without another word, he marched down the hallway and threw open Dr. Hale's door. Emma couldn't hear the conversation, but she saw Dr. Hale's face turn from red to white to red again. She saw him stand up, saw his mouth moving, making excuses probably, saw Dr. Torres hold up a hand and say something that made Dr. Hale sit back down hard. When Dr. Torres returned, he looked at Emma differently. "I need you to give me a full report on every patient, every procedure, everything that happened tonight." "Yes, sir." "And Emma," he paused, "you did good, real good." At 3:33 a.m., Emma finally sat down, just for a minute, just to breathe. She found a chair in the break room, collapsed into it, and let her head fall back against the wall. Her body hurt everywhere. Her feet felt like raw meat. Her hands had stopped shaking, but only because she was too exhausted to shake. She should go home. She should sleep for a week. She should quit nursing and open a flower shop somewhere quiet where people didn't die. But she wouldn't, because despite everything, despite the exhaustion and the pain and the absolute certainty that she was going to face consequences for what she'd done tonight, Emma felt alive. For the first time since Daniel died, she felt alive. The break room door opened. Diane stuck her head in. "Emma, there's someone here to see you." "If it's Dr. Hale's lawyer, tell them I'll be right there." "It's not a lawyer." Diane's voice was strange, careful. You should just come see." Emma dragged herself to her feet. Every muscle protested. She followed Diane back into the ER, which was finally starting to calm down. Patients were being transferred to ICU or surgery. The walking wounded were being discharged. The dead had been taken to the morgue. And standing in the middle of it all was a man Emma hadn't seen in 8 years. He was tall, silver-haired, with the kind of bearing that screamed military even in civilian clothes. His face was weathered, lined with age and experience. But his eyes were sharp ice blue, taking in everything with tactical precision. Those eyes found Emma, locked on her, and in that moment, Emma forgot how to breathe. "Hello, Phoenix," he said. The name hit her like a bullet. Phoenix, the call sign Daniel had given her during their deployment together. The name she'd buried along with her husband. The name she'd sworn never to use again. Admiral Jack Carter, Daniel's commanding officer, the man who'd delivered the news of Daniel's death. The man who'd promised at the funeral that he'd keep an eye on her, that he'd make sure she was okay. The man she'd been avoiding for 8 years. "Admiral," Emma whispered. Her knees felt weak. "What are you doing here?" Jack stepped forward. His face was unreadable, that mask of command he'd worn for 30 years of Navy service. But something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, pride, maybe sadness. "I'm on the hospital board now," he said. "Retired last year. They called me about the mass casualty event." He paused. "Imagine my surprise when I pulled up the duty roster and saw your name." Emma's hands clenched into fists. 8 years. She'd been working at St. Bethany for 8 years, and he'd never said a word. Never reached out. Never acknowledged her existence. "Small world," she managed. "Is it?" Jack's eyes searched her face. "Or did you choose this hospital specifically because you knew I'd never look for you here?" The accuracy of that statement stole Emma's breath. "I also imagine my surprise," Jack continued, his voice dropping lower, "when I reviewed tonight's incident reports and found that a certain trauma nurse performed procedures that should have ended her career. Procedures that saved 12 lives. 13, Emma corrected automatically. "The boy with the TBI makes 13. Jack's eyebrow rose. "The ventriculostomy. Yes, Dr. Chen is very impressed. She's also very concerned about the legal implications." "I know. Do you?" Jack stepped closer. Close enough that Emma had to look up to meet his eyes. "Do you know what you've done here tonight, Emma? Do you understand what this means?" Emma's throat tightened. "I broke protocol. I performed procedures outside my scope of practice. I risked my license, my career, possibly criminal charges." "Yes," Jack agreed. "You did all of that. And you know what else you did?" Emma shook her head. "You honored every promise Daniel ever made me about you." Jack's voice cracked just slightly, just enough. "He told me you were the bravest person he'd ever met, that you could handle any crisis, that when everything went to hell, you were the one who stayed calm, who made the impossible decisions, who saved lives when everyone else froze." Jack's eyes glistened. "He told me that you were a phoenix, that you could burn to ashes and rise again stronger. And tonight, Emma, I watched you prove him right." Emma's vision blurred. She couldn't cry. Not here, not now, not after holding it together for 17 hours straight. "Why are you here?" she asked again. Really, Jack was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft, gentle. The voice of a man who'd sent too many soldiers to their deaths and carried the weight of every single one. "Because 8 years ago, I made a promise to a dying Marine that I would look after his wife, and I failed. I let you disappear. I let you hide from the world, from your grief, from everything Daniel loved about you." He paused. "But I never stopped watching, Emma. I never stopped keeping tabs. And when I saw what you did tonight, I knew it was time to stop hiding." "I'm not hiding." "Aren't you, Jack gestured around the ER. "You're one of the most talented trauma nurses in the country. You have combat medical experience. You have skills that most physicians would kill for. And you're working night shifts at a second-tier hospital under a coward like Marcus Hale because you don't want anyone to notice you. Because you don't want anyone to ask questions about your past. Because you're terrified that if you let yourself be seen, you'll have to feel everything you have been running from." Emma's hand shook. "You don't know anything about me. I know Daniel loved you. I know he made me promise to keep you safe. And I know that what I'm about to do is either going to save your life or make you hate me forever." "What are you talking about?" Jack reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder. Official looking, sealed. He held it out to Emma. "This is a formal inquiry into tonight's events. Dr. Hale has already filed a complaint about your conduct. He wants your license revoked. He wants you fired." Emma's heart stopped. She'd expected consequences, but hearing it said out loud made it real. "However," Jack continued, "as a member of the hospital board, I've launched my own investigation into Dr. Hale's conduct, his absence during a mass casualty event, his failure to provide adequate medical supervision, his pattern of behavior that multiple staff members have reported over the years. Emma's eyes widened. I can't promise anything, Jack said, but I can promise you this, you won't face this alone. And the truth of what happened tonight will come out. All of it. Emma took the folder with numb fingers. There's something else, Jack said. The Carter Foundation, the veterans charity I run, is partnering with County General to create a new program. Advanced Emergency Response Nurses, combat medics transitioning to civilian medicine. People like you, Emma. People with field experience who can make the impossible decisions in crisis situations. He paused. I want you to consider joining us. I can't. You don't have to answer now, but think about it. Please. Jack turned to leave, then stopped. He looked back at Emma one more time, and in his eyes she saw Daniel. Saw the same stubborn determination, the same unshakable belief that some fights were worth fighting, even when you knew you'd lose. He'd be proud of you, Emma. What you did tonight, what you've become. He'd be so damn proud. Then he was gone, disappearing into the pre-dawn darkness, leaving Emma standing alone in the middle of the ER with a folder in her hands and tears finally streaming down her face. Emma stood in the break room at 4:17 a.m. staring at the folder Jack had given her. Her hands still trembled, though whether from exhaustion or the emotional earthquake of seeing him again, she couldn't tell. The pages inside blurred together words like formal inquiry and potential misconduct and license suspension, dancing in front of her eyes like accusations. The door burst open. Diane rushed in, her face flushed. Emma, you need to come quick. The boy James, the one you did the ventriculostomy on his parents, just arrived. Emma's stomach dropped. She'd saved the kid's life, but she'd also drilled a hole in his skull without legal authority. What was she supposed to say to his parents? Congratulations, your son's alive, and by the way, I might go to prison for saving him. Where are they? Base 6. Dr. Chen's with them now, but they're asking for you. They want to meet the nurse who saved their son. Umbao followed Diane down the hallway, each step feeling like walking toward a firing squad. Through the window of Base 6, she could see them. A woman in her 40s, blonde hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, mascara streaked down her face. A man about the same age, his arm around his wife, his other hand gripping the bed rail so hard his knuckles had gone white. Their son lay between them, still unconscious but alive. The ventilator breathed for him. The monitors beeped steadily. The ventriculostomy drain Emma had placed showed clear fluid, no blood pressure reading stable. Dr. Chen saw Emma approach and stepped out into the hallway. I told them what you did, she said quietly. They want to thank you. Dr. Chen, I shouldn't have. You absolutely should have. Dr. Chen's voice was firm. That boy would be dead right now if you'd waited for me. His ICP was catastrophic. Another 5 minutes and the damage would have been irreversible. She paused. What you did was technically illegal. It was also the only right choice. I've already submitted my statement to the board. You saved his life, Emma. Own it. Emma wanted to argue, but Dr. Chen had already walked away. She took a deep breath and pushed open the door to Base 6. James's mother looked up, and the raw gratitude in her eyes nearly broke Emma. You're Emma. The woman stood across the small space and grabbed Emma's hands. You're the one who saved him. I did what I could. Dr. Chen is the neurosurgeon. She's the one who... Dr. Chen told us everything. The father stood too. She said you performed an emergency procedure, that you risked everything to give our son a chance. Emma's throat tightened. He needed help. I couldn't just stand there and watch him die. The mother pulled Emma into a fierce hug. Emma stood rigid for a moment, then slowly, carefully hugged her back. When they separated, the woman was crying again. His name is James Patrick Morrison. He's 19. He was working at the plant to save money for college. He wants to be a teacher. She looked at her son, hooked up to machines, his head wrapped in bandages. He's our only child, our whole world, and you gave him back to us. Emma couldn't speak, couldn't breathe, because all she could think about was Daniel and how nobody had given him back to her. How she'd gotten a knock on the door and 2 officers in dress blues and words that shattered her entire existence. Thank you, James's father said, his voice breaking. Thank you for being brave enough to do what others wouldn't. Emma nodded, not trusting her voice. She checked James's vitals one more time, adjusted his IV, made sure everything was perfect, then excused herself and walked straight to the bathroom. She made it into a stall before the sobs came. great heaving gasps that she muffled with her hand. 8 years of grief, 8 years of holding it together, 8 years of pretending she was fine. All of it came crashing down at once. Daniel should have had someone like her, someone willing to break the rules to risk everything to save him when he was drowning. But the VA system had failed him. The doctors had missed the signs. And Emma, working night shifts at a different hospital, had been too blind to see that her husband was planning to end his life. A knock on the stall door made her jump. "Emma, it's me!" Diane's voice, soft, worried. "Honey, let me in." Emma unlocked the door. Diane took one look at her and pulled her into a hug. "You did good tonight," Diane whispered. "You did so good. I broke every rule. I could lose everything. Or you could be exactly what this hospital needs." Diane pulled back, held Emma's shoulders. "You think I don't know why you hide here, why you work nights, avoid attention, never push for promotions. I've known you for 8 years, Emma. I know you're running from something, but tonight you stopped running. Tonight you were the nurse you were always meant to be." Emma wiped her eyes. Jack Carter showed up. Diane's eyebrows shot up. "The Admiral. The one from your husband's unit. He's on the hospital board. He saw everything I did tonight. He said Daniel would be proud. He's right. He also said Dr. Hale filed a complaint against me." Diane's expression darkened. "Of course he did. That coward spent the whole night hiding in his office while you saved lives, and now he's trying to cover his own ass by throwing you under the bus. What if he wins? What if they take my license? Then we fight." Diane's voice was steel. "Every nurse in this ER saw what happened tonight. Every patient you saved, every life you touched. We'll testify. We'll make sure the truth comes out." At 5:03 a.m., Emma finally went home. She drove through empty streets, watching the sky lighten from black to deep blue to pale pink. Her body screamed for sleep, but her mind wouldn't stop racing. She pulled into her apartment parking lot and sat in her car for 10 minutes, staring at nothing. The building was quiet. Most of her neighbors were still asleep, normal people with normal jobs who didn't spend their nights elbow deep in trauma. Inside her apartment, everything was exactly as she'd left it 17 hours ago. Coffee mug in the sink, book open on the couch, Daniel's Marine Corps photo on the mantle, the one she couldn't bring herself to put away, but also couldn't stand to look at. She walked over to it now, really looked at it. Daniel in his dress blues, young and strong and full of life. The man she'd fallen in love with during their deployment together. The man who'd called her Phoenix because she'd saved 3 Marines during a firefight, working on them while bullets flew overhead, refusing to give up even when everyone else said it was hopeless. "I did it again," she whispered to the photo. "I broke the rules. I saved them anyway, just like you always said I would." The photo didn't answer. It never did. Emma showered, washing blood and sweat and chemicals down the drain. She should sleep. She should eat. She should do all the normal things a person does after a night like that. Instead, she opened the folder Jack had given her. The first page was Dr. Hale's formal complaint. Emma Walker, registered nurse, performed medical procedures outside her scope of practice, including but not limited to endotracheal intubation and ventriculostomy placement without physician authorization, creating significant liability for St. Bethany Medical Center and endangering patient safety through reckless disregard for established protocols. Reading it made her sick. He'd twisted everything, made her sound like a rogue nurse playing doctor, completely ignoring the fact that patients had been dying and he'd been on the phone with his lawyer. The second page was a list of witness statements. Diane had already given hers. So had Jenny, so had every nurse and tech who'd been there. They'd all told the same story. Dr. Hale had abandoned them. Emma had stepped up. People who should have died were alive because of her. The third page made Emma's hands shake. It was a statement from Admiral Jack Carter, written in his precise military hand. "To the Board of Directors of St. Bethany Medical Center, I submit this account as both a board member and as someone who has known Nurse Emma Walker for 12 years, including her service as a Navy corpsman attached to my command in Afghanistan." Emma hadn't known Jack was writing this, hadn't known he was going to defend her. The statement detailed her service record: 3 commendations for valor, 2 Bronze Stars, a Navy Cross for the firefight where she'd earned her call sign. Jack described how she'd worked on casualties under direct enemy fire, how she'd made impossible decisions with limited resources, how she'd saved lives when everyone else had given up hope. He then drew a direct parallel to last night. Nurse Walker displayed the same courage, the same clinical excellence, and the same unwavering commitment to saving lives that she demonstrated in combat. The procedures she performed were within her training and experience, even if they exceeded standard civilian nursing protocols. In a mass casualty situation with inadequate physician coverage, she made the decisions necessary to preserve life. The statement ended with a recommendation that not only should charges against Emma be dropped, but that St. Bethany should recognize her actions and consider expanding the scope of practice for experienced trauma nurses. Emma read it 3 times. Then she called Jack's number, which was printed at the bottom of the page. He answered on the second ring. "I was wondering when you'd call." "You didn't have to do this." "Yes, I did. I made a promise to Daniel." "This isn't about Daniel. This is about my career." "Is it?" Jack's voice was gentle. "Emma, when was the last time you let someone help you? When was the last time you accepted that you don't have to fight every battle alone?" Emma closed her eyes. "I don't know how to do that." "Then learn, starting now. Let me help you through this." Why do you care so much?" Jack was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Because the night Daniel died, he called me." "Did you know that?" Emma's breath caught. "What?" "He called me from the VA hospital. 3 hours before it happened. He was crying, Emma, begging me to help him, telling me he couldn't live with the nightmares anymore, that he was drowning, that he didn't know how to be the man you needed him to be." Jack's voice cracked. "And I told him to tough it out. I told him to be strong. I told him every wrong thing a commanding officer could tell a suffering Marine. And then I hung up because I had a meeting I thought was more important." Emma felt like she'd been punched in the chest. "You never told me. How could I look you in the eye at his funeral and tell you that I could have saved him and I didn't, that I failed him in his darkest moment?" Jack took a shaky breath. "I've carried that guilt for 8 years. And when I saw what you did last night, saw you refuse to abandon those patients the way I abandoned Daniel, I knew I couldn't fail again. I couldn't let Hale destroy you for being brave enough to do what I wasn't." Emma didn't realize she was crying until tears dripped onto the folder. "It wasn't your fault. Wasn't it? I was his commanding officer. He trusted me. And he was my husband. I lived with him. I should have seen the signs. We both failed him, Emma, but we don't have to keep failing. We can honor his memory by making sure other people don't fall through the cracks. That's why I started the foundation. That's why I want you to join the program at County General. Not because I feel guilty, but because you're exactly the kind of person who can make a difference." Emma wiped her eyes. "I need to think about it. Take all the time you need. But Emma, whatever happens with the board, whatever they decide about your license, you are not alone in this. I promise you that." After they hung up, Emma sat in silence for a long time. The sun was fully up now, streaming through her windows, turning her small apartment golden. She should sleep. God, she should sleep. But her phone rang again. Unknown number. "Hello? Is this Emma Walker?" A woman's voice. Professional, careful. "Yes. This is Linda Chen from Channel 7 News. We received a tip about the mass casualty event at St. Bethany last night. We understand you played a significant role in treating the victims. Would you be willing to give us an interview?" Emma's stomach dropped. "How did you get this number?" "We have sources at the hospital. Ms. Walker, our viewers are very interested in hearing about the heroic actions of the nursing staff, particularly the nurse who performed emergency neurosurgery to save a young man's life." "I can't comment. I'm sorry. We're planning to run the story tonight at 6, with or without your input. I thought you might want the opportunity to tell your side." "My side of what?" "There are allegations that you exceeded your authority, that you performed procedures you weren't qualified for, that you endangered patients. Don't you want to set the record straight?" Emma's hands went cold. "Who told you that?" "I can't reveal my sources, but I can tell you that someone at St. Bethany is very concerned about potential liability issues stemming from your actions." Dr. Hale, the bastard, had gone to the media. "No comment," Emma said and hung up. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. Another reporter. Then another. Within 20 minutes, Emma had 6 voicemails from various news outlets, all asking about the hero nurse who'd either saved lives or committed medical malpractice, depending on who you asked. At 7:42 a.m., Diane called. "Have you seen the news?" Emma's heart sank. What are they saying? Channel 7 is running a teaser for tonight's broadcast. Hero or liability, the nurse who performed unauthorized surgery. They're framing it like you went rogue. Emma, this is bad. Hale must have leaked it. Of course he did. He's trying to control the narrative before the board investigation even starts. Diane's voice was furious. That spineless, cowardly son of a... What do I do? You fight back. You tell your story. Don't let him make you the villain. But Emma didn't know how to fight back. She'd spent 8 years trying to be invisible, and now she was about to be on the evening news judged by thousands of people who hadn't been there, who hadn't seen the dying patients, who hadn't felt the weight of those impossible decisions. At 9:15 a.m. her phone rang again. This time it was Jack. Don't talk to any reporters, he said without preamble. The hospital's legal team is preparing a statement. They're going to handle the media. It's too late. Everyone already knows. They know a version, not the truth. Emma, I need you to trust me on this. Let the process play out. Let the investigation happen. The facts are on your side. Are they? Because it feels like I'm about to be crucified. You won't be. I won't let that happen. At 11:30 a.m., Emma's apartment buzzer rang. She ignored it. It rang again, then again. Finally, she dragged herself to the intercom. What? Emma Walker, a man's voice. This is Detective Ryan Morris with the city police. I need to ask you some questions about the events at St. Bethany Medical Center. Emma's blood ran cold. Are you arresting me? No, ma'am, just questions. May I come up? Emma buzzed him in her mind racing. Police. They'd sent the police. This was worse than she thought. Detective Morris was in his 50s, gray hair, kind eyes, the look of a man who'd seen too much but still cared. He showed her his badge, apologized for disturbing her, asked if they could sit down. I'm investigating the incident at St. Bethany, he said. Multiple patients, mass casualty event. I've been interviewing staff members about the response. Am I being charged with something? Not at this time, but I need to understand what happened. Specifically, I need to understand the medical procedures you performed and whether you had appropriate authorization. Emma's lawyer instinct kicked in, the lawyer she didn't have. I think I should have legal representation before answering questions. Detective Morris nodded. That's your right. But Ms. Walker, off the record, I've been talking to a lot of people today. Nurses, doctors, patients, paramedics, and every single one of them says the same thing. You saved lives last night. You did things that shouldn't have been necessary because the physician in charge wasn't doing his job. Then why are you here? Because someone filed a formal complaint alleging that you committed medical assault, that you performed surgical procedures on patients without consent. He paused. That someone is Dr. Marcus Hale. Medical assault. The words hung in the air like poison. Those patients were dying. I saved them. I believe you, but belief isn't the same as legal evidence. I need statements, documentation, proof that what you did was necessary and appropriate under the circumstances. Detective Morris leaned forward. Help me help you, Ms. Walker. Give me the facts so I can close this case before it becomes something bigger. Emma spent the next 2 hours walking him through every decision, every procedure, every patient. Detective Morris took notes, asked clarifying questions, never once made her feel like a criminal. When they finished, he stood and shook her hand. For what it's worth, my daughter's a nurse. If she was in your situation, I'd hope she'd have the courage to do exactly what you did. Does that mean I'm not being charged? It means I'm going to do a thorough investigation and let the evidence speak for itself. But Ms. Walker, you might want to get that lawyer anyway, just in case. After he left, Emma finally collapsed into bed. She set 3 alarms because she didn't trust herself to wake up for her next shift, then closed her eyes and fell into darkness. She dreamed of Daniel. They were back in Afghanistan working on a Marine who'd stepped on an IED. Daniel was holding pressure on the femoral artery while Emma intubated. They worked together like they always had perfect sync, reading each other's minds. You can do this, Phoenix, Daniel said. You've always been able to do this. I'm scared. Fear means you care. Fear means you're human, but you don't let it stop you. That's why you're Phoenix. You burn through the fear and come out stronger. Emma woke at 5:47 p.m. to her phone ringing. She grabbed it without looking. Hello? Emma, turn on channel 7 now. Diane's voice was urgent. Emma fumbled for her remote. The news came on. A young reporter stood outside St. Bethany Medical Center. Tonight, we bring you an exclusive investigation into a controversial incident at this hospital. A nurse is being called both a hero and a liability after performing emergency surgery without proper authorization. The question everyone's asking, did Emma Walker save lives or did she endanger patients by overstepping her bounds? The screen cut to footage of the hospital, then to Dr. Marcus Hale, standing in his office looking somber and concerned. Patient safety is our primary concern, Hale said. While we appreciate Nurse Walker's dedication, there are protocols in place for a reason. When those protocols are violated, even with good intentions, it creates serious risks. Emma felt sick. Then the reporter's voice again. But not everyone agrees with Dr. Hale's assessment. The screen cut to Dr. Patricia Chen. Emma Walker saved James Morrison's life. Full stop. Without her intervention, that young man would have died before I could get there. She performed a technically perfect ventriculostomy under extreme pressure with limited resources. Any neurosurgeon would be proud of that procedure. Then Diane appeared on screen. Dr. Hale was absent during the crisis. He was in his office while 40 patients flooded our ER with only 3 nurses on staff. Emma stepped up because someone had to. She's the bravest nurse I've ever worked with. Then James Morrison's mother. Our son is alive because of Emma Walker. She risked her career, maybe her freedom, to give him a chance. We'll be forever grateful. The report ended with the anchor saying the hospital board would be conducting a formal investigation. Emma's phone exploded with texts. Diane, Jenny, nurses from other shifts, people she hadn't talked to in years, all of them supporting her, all of them saying she'd done the right thing. But mixed in were other messages, angry ones, people saying she was dangerous, that nurses who thought they were doctors got people killed, that she should be in jail. At 8:33 p.m., Emma got a text from an unknown number. This is Jack. Board meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. They're going to review everything. You need to be there. And Emma, bring Daniel's medals. All of them. Trust me on this. Emma stared at the message. Daniel's medals were in a box in her closet. She hadn't looked at them in 8 years, hadn't touched them. They were part of the life she'd buried. But Jack had said, trust me. So at 9:07 p.m., Emma pulled down the box. Inside were Daniel's bronze stars, his purple heart, his campaign ribbons. And underneath them, wrapped in tissue paper, was her own Navy Cross. The citation read, for extraordinary heroism while serving as a hospital corpsman attached to a Marine rifle company. Under intense enemy fire, Petty Officer Walker moved across open terrain to reach 3 wounded Marines. Despite being wounded herself, she provided life-saving medical care, performing emergency procedures under combat conditions. Her actions saved 3 lives and exemplified the highest traditions of the Naval Service. Daniel had been so proud of her that day, had called her Phoenix for the first time, had told everyone that his wife was tougher than any Marine he'd ever served with. Emma held the medal, felt its weight, remembered who she'd been before grief had hollowed her out. Maybe it was time to remember. Maybe it was time to stop hiding. Maybe it was time to be Phoenix again. Emma walked into St. Bethany Medical Center at 1:47 p.m. the next day wearing the only suit she owned, a navy blue one she'd bought for Daniel's funeral and never worn since. The medals were in her purse, wrapped carefully in the same tissue paper. Her hands were steady, but inside she was screaming. The lobby was packed with reporters, cameras, microphones. They swarmed her the moment she stepped through the doors. Ms. Walker, do you regret performing unauthorized surgery? Are you concerned about losing your license? Did Dr. Hale give you permission to treat patients? Emma kept her head down, pushed through the crowd. A security guard she'd known for years, Marcus, stepped in front of her, blocking the cameras. Come on, folks, give her some space, he said, then whispered to Emma. Use the back elevator. And 3rd floor, conference room C. Emma nodded her thanks and escaped down the hallway. Her heart hammered against her ribs. She'd faced enemy fire in Afghanistan without this level of terror. But combat was different. In combat, you knew who the enemy was. Here she wasn't sure who was trying to destroy her and who was trying to save her. The elevator doors opened on the 3rd floor at 1:53 p.m. Jack was waiting in the hallway wearing a crisp suit, his posture military straight. You brought them, he asked quietly. Emma patted her purse. I don't understand why you want me to. You will. Trust me. Jack's eyes searched her face. How are you holding up? I've been better. You've also been worse. Remember that. He gestured toward the conference room. The board is ready. Dr. Hale is already inside. So is his lawyer. Emma's stomach turned. He brought a lawyer. Of course he did. He knows he's guilty, so he's trying to make you look worse. Jack's jaw tightened. But we're ready for him. They walked into the conference room together at 1:58 p.m. The board sat at a long table. 7 people, all in business attire, all wearing expressions that gave nothing away. Dr. Hale sat on one side with a man in an expensive suit who had to be his attorney. On the other side sat Dr. Patricia Chen Diane and 2 other nurses Emma recognized from the ER. And in the back row, sitting quietly, were James Morrison's parents. Emma's breath caught. Jack placed a gentle hand on her elbow, guided her to a chair. "Thank you all for coming," said Margaret Winters, the board chairwoman. She was in her 60s, gray hair pulled into a severe bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. "We're here to review the events of 2 nights ago and determine appropriate action regarding Nurse Emma Walker's conduct during the mass casualty incident." Dr. Hale leaned forward immediately. "Madam Chairwoman, I'd like to state for the record that—" "You'll have your turn, Dr. Hale." Margaret's voice was ice. "We'll start with a timeline of events. Admiral Carter, you've prepared a summary." Jack clicked a remote, and a presentation appeared on the screen behind him. "Timeline of events," it read. Below that, a minute-by-minute breakdown of the night. At 11:47 p.m., Nurse Walker was recalled to duty due to staff shortages during a mass casualty event. Jack began. His voice was calm, authoritative, the voice of a man who'd briefed generals and presidents. At 11:52 p.m., the first patient arrived. At that time, Dr. Marcus Hale, the attending physician, was present in the emergency room. The screen showed a log entry. Dr. Hale signed in at 11:40 p.m. However, Jack continued, at 11:58 p.m. Dr. Hale retreated to his office. According to multiple witness statements and phone records, he remained there for the next 90 minutes, during which time 41 patients arrived requiring immediate care. Dr. Hale's lawyer stood. Objection. Dr. Hale was managing the crisis from his office, coordinating with administration, and phone records show Dr. Hale made 3 calls during that period. Jack interrupted. 1 to his personal attorney, 1 to his malpractice insurance carrier, 1 to a hospital administrator regarding the potential liability issues. He made 0 calls to activate the hospital's disaster response protocol, 0 calls to request additional staff, 0 calls to neighboring hospitals for support. The room went dead silent. Margaret Winters looked at Dr. Hale over her glasses. "Is this accurate?" Dr. Hale's face had gone red. "I was assessing the situation and determining the appropriate response. I can't be expected to." "You can be expected to provide medical care," Jack said flatly. "That's your job." The lawyer tried again. "Dr. Hale's actions or inactions are not what we're here to discuss. We're here because Nurse Walker performed procedures that she was not authorized to perform, creating significant liability for. She saved 13 lives." Dr. Chen interrupted, standing. 13 people who would have died if she'd waited for authorization that never came. "The law doesn't care about intentions," the lawyer shot back. "It cares about scope of practice, licensure, and liability." "The law also cares about abandonment," Jack said quietly, "and gross negligence, and dereliction of duty." Dr. Hale slammed his hand on the table. "I did not abandon my post. I was managing a complex situation that required administrative oversight." "You were covering your ass while people died," Diane said, her voice shaking with anger. "I was there, Dr. Hale. I saw you. I heard you. You were on the phone with your lawyer while Emma was coding patients, emplacing chest tubes, and saving lives. You were too cowardly to save yourself." "That's enough." Margaret held up her hand. "We will maintain professional decorum, or I will clear this room." Emma sat frozen, watching it all unfold around her. She felt like a spectator at her own trial. Margaret turned to her. "Nurse Walker, do you have a statement?" Emma's throat was dry. She looked at Jack, who nodded encouragingly. She looked at the Morrisons, who smiled at her with tears in their eyes. She looked at the medals in her purse. "Yes, ma'am," Emma said, standing. Her legs felt like water, but her voice came out strong. "I violated protocol. I performed procedures outside my scope of practice. I did it knowingly, deliberately, and I'd do it again." The lawyer's eyes lit up like she'd just confessed to murder. "Because those patients were dying," Emma continued, "and the physician responsible for their care was unavailable. I made a choice. Save lives now and face consequences later, or follow protocol and watch people die. I chose to save them. Even though you knew it could cost you your career, Margaret asked. Even though, Emma's voice didn't waver. I've been a nurse for 20 years. Before that, I was a Navy corpsman. I've worked in field hospitals under enemy fire. I've triaged mass casualties in combat zones. I've held dying Marines in my arms and promised them they'd make it home. Her voice cracked slightly. I didn't keep all those promises. But the ones I could keep, I did, and I'll keep making those promises, keep fighting for those lives, whether I have a license or not. Mrs. Morrison was openly crying now. Mr. Morrison had his arm around her. Dr. Hale stood abruptly. This is absurd. She's admitting to breaking the law and you're all treating her like a hero. She endangered patients. She created massive liabilities. She saved our son. Mrs. Morrison was on her feet now, her voice ringing through the room. She drilled a hole in his skull with her bare hands because you were too busy protecting yourself to do your job. My boy is alive because of her. Alive. Mrs. Morrison, please, Margaret said gently. We understand your gratitude, but do you saw him? Mr. Morrison stood too. Do you understand that we got a call at midnight saying our only child had been in an explosion and might not survive the night? Do you understand that we drove 2 hours in terror, praying, begging God for a miracle? Do you understand that when we got here, Dr. Chen told us Emma had performed an emergency procedure that saved James's life, and that if she'd waited even 5 more minutes, our son would be brain dead? He turned to face Dr. Hale directly. You want to talk about liability, about lawsuits? I'm a lawyer, Dr. Hale. I specialize in medical malpractice. And if my son had died because you were too busy protecting yourself to provide care, I would have sued you, this hospital, and everyone involved into bankruptcy. Emma Walker didn't create your liability. She saved you from it. The silence that followed was deafening. At 2:34 p.m., Margaret called for a 15-minute recess. The board filed out. Dr. Hale and his lawyer huddled in a corner, arguing in whispers. Emma stepped into the hallway, her legs shaking so badly she had to lean against the wall. Jack followed her out. You did good in there, he said. I basically confessed to everything they're accusing me of. You told the truth. That matters. Jack paused. I have something to tell you. Something you need to know before they make their decision. Emma looked at him. His face was serious trouble. I pulled Dr. Hale's personnel file this morning, Jack said quietly. This isn't the first time he's been investigated. 3 years ago, a patient died during a cardiac emergency while Hale was on duty. The family sued, claimed he delayed treatment. The hospital settled quietly. 2 years before that, a nurse filed a complaint saying Hale refused to respond to a code blue because he was on a personal call. That was also buried. Jack's eyes were hard. Emma, you're not the problem here. You're the symptom. Hale has been getting away with negligence for years because the hospital prioritized avoiding lawsuits over holding him accountable. Why didn't anyone stop him? Because he's been here 15 years. Because he has connections. Because people were afraid. Jack looked toward the conference room. But they're not afraid anymore. What you did standing up to him, refusing to let patients die because he wouldn't do his own, it gave other people courage. At 2:51 p.m., they were called back in. Margaret and the board members had returned their expressions unreadable. We've reviewed the evidence, Margaret said. We've considered the witness statements, the phone records, the medical documentation, and the outcomes. We have several decisions to announce. Emma's heart stopped. First, regarding Dr. Marcus Hale. Margaret's voice was hard. Effective immediately, you are suspended pending a full investigation into your conduct during the mass casualty event and previous incidents that have come to light. You will surrender your hospital credentials and are prohibited from practicing at this facility until the investigation is complete. Dr. Hale shot to his feet. You can't. We can, and we have, Margaret said coldly. You abandoned patients during a crisis. That is grounds for immediate suspension. Dr. Hale's lawyer was already packing his briefcase, his face grim. They both knew how this would end. Second, Margaret continued, turning to Emma, regarding Nurse Emma Walker. Emma couldn't breathe. This was it, the moment that would define the rest of her life. Your actions violated hospital protocol and exceeded your scope of practice under normal circumstances. However, the circumstances that night were not normal. You were placed in an impossible situation with inadequate physician oversight and acted to preserve life using skills and training acquired through military service. Emma's vision blurred. The board has determined that while your actions cannot be officially sanctioned, they will not result in disciplinary action. Your nursing license will remain active, and you will continue to be employed at St. Bethany Medical Center. Emma's knees buckled. Jack caught her elbow, steadied her. However, Margaret said, and Emma's stomach dropped again, we cannot ignore that you possess skills and training that exceed standard nursing practice. Which brings us to our third decision. Margaret looked at Jack, who nodded. St. Bethany Medical Center, in partnership with County General Hospital and the Carter Foundation for Veterans, will be launching a new program for advanced emergency response nurses. This program will formally train and credential experienced nurses with combat medical backgrounds to perform expanded procedures during crisis situations under appropriate oversight. Emma couldn't process what she was hearing. Admiral Carter has agreed to direct the program, Margaret continued. And Nurse Walker, we would like you to be our first participant. You would undergo additional training, receive formal credentialing, and help develop protocols that could save lives across the entire hospital system. The room erupted. The Morrisons were hugging each other. Diane was crying. Dr. Chen was smiling. Emma just stood there stunned. Do you accept? Margaret asked. Emma looked at Jack. He was watching her with an expression she'd never seen before. Pride. Hope. Something that looked like redemption. She thought about Daniel, about the promises she'd made, about the nurse she'd been in Afghanistan, and the one she'd become after he died. About hiding for 8 years because she was afraid of feeling too much caring, too much losing too much. She thought about James Morrison alive because she'd refused to hide. Yes, Emma whispered. Then louder, yes, I accept. At 3:17 p.m., Emma walked out of the conference room a different person than she'd walked in. The reporters were still in the lobby, but this time she didn't hide. She stood in front of the cameras, Jack beside her, and told them the truth. I'm a nurse, I save lives. That's what I did 2 nights ago, and that's what I'll keep doing. Her voice was strong, clear. I'm grateful to the board for their decision, and I'm honored to help build a program that will give other nurses the tools to make the impossible decisions in crisis situations. A reporter shouted, do you think you're a hero? Emma thought about that, about Daniel calling her Phoenix, about the 13 patients who were alive because she'd refused to give up, about the medals in her purse that she'd been too afraid to look at for 8 years. No, she said finally, I'm just a nurse who refused to let people die. If that makes me a hero, then every nurse who shows up and does their job every day is a hero too. At 4:22 p.m., Emma's phone rang, unknown number. She almost didn't answer, expecting another reporter. Hello. Is this Emma Walker? A male voice. Young, weak, but alive. Yes. This is James Morrison. I just woke up. My parents told me what you did. His voice cracked. I wanted to say thank you for saving my life, for not giving up on me. Emma sat down hard on a bench in the hospital courtyard. Tears streamed down her face. James, how are you feeling? Like someone drilled a hole in my head. He laughed weakly. But I'm alive. Dr. Chen says I'm going to recover. Says I might even make it to college next year like I planned. You will. You're strong. My mom says you risked everything for me, that you could have lost your job, your license, everything. You were worth the risk. James was quiet for a moment. I don't remember much from that night, but I remember hearing your voice. You were telling me to hang on, that you had me, that I was going to be okay. His voice broke, and I believed you. Even though I was dying, I believed you. Emma couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Thank you, James said. Thank you for not letting me die. After they hung up, Emma sat in the courtyard until the sun started to set. People walked past, nurses changing shifts, visitors leaving the normal rhythm of hospital life continuing around her. At 6:03 p.m., Jack found her there. You okay? He asked, sitting beside her on the bench. James called me. I heard. Kid's got good instincts. Jack's smile sliced through him. He knows who saved his life. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sky turn from blue to orange to purple. I need to tell you something, Emma said finally. About Daniel, about the night he died. Jack tensed beside her. I knew something was wrong for weeks, maybe months. He was pulling away, having nightmares, drinking too much. I tried to help, tried to get him to see someone, but he kept saying he was fine. And I believed him because it was easier than facing the truth. Emma's voice shook. The night it happened, we had a fight. I was working a double shift, and he called me drunk, saying he needed me to come home. I told him I couldn't leave work, that he needed to go to the VA, call his sponsor, do something. I told him to be strong. Emma, I said the same thing you did, the exact same thing. And he said okay. He said he understood. He said he loved me. Emma wiped her eyes. 3 hours later, the VA called. He was gone. And I spent 8 years blaming myself, thinking if I'd just gone home, if I'd just been there, I could have saved him. Jack's face was wet with tears. We both failed him. No. Emma turned to look at him, and he was sick. He had PTSD, depression, survivor's guilt, all these things we didn't understand. We couldn't save him because he couldn't save himself. And spending the rest of our lives carrying that guilt doesn't honor his memory. It just means the war killed 3 people instead of 1. Jack let out a shaky breath. How did you get so wise? I drilled a hole in a kid's skull and realized I was still alive, still capable of saving people, still worth something, even though I couldn't save the person I loved most. Emma pulled the medals from her purse. Daniel's and hers tangled together like they'd been for 8 years. Daniel wanted me to be Phoenix, to rise from the ashes. It took me 8 years to understand what that meant. What does it mean? It means some things have to burn completely before they can be reborn. Emma held up the medals, let them catch the fading light. I've been ashes long enough. It's time to fly. At 7:45 p.m., Emma went back inside the hospital. Not to work, not yet. To visit James Morrison in the ICU. He was awake, alert, his head wrapped in bandages, his parents on either side of his bed. There she is, Mr. Morrison said, smiling. The woman who saved our boy. Emma approached the bed slowly. James looked at her with clear eyes, no sign of brain damage, no sign of the death that had been so close. Hey, he said, his voice stronger than on the phone. You're my guardian angel. I'm just a nurse. You're more than that. Mrs. Morrison took Emma's hand. You're family now. Anyone who fights that hard to save our son is family. Emma stayed for 20 minutes checking James's vitals out of habit, answering his questions about what had happened, watching him joke with his parents about his new scar. Life. Continuing, growing, healing. When she left the ICU at 8:07 p.m., Diane was waiting in the hallway. I heard the board's decision, Diane said. I'm so proud of you. I couldn't have done it without you, without everyone who testified. Yes, you could have, but you didn't have to. That's the difference. Diane hugged her tight. You're not alone anymore, Emma. You stopped being alone the moment you decided to fight. At 9:33 p.m., Emma finally made it home. She was exhausted, emotionally wrung out, but also lighter than she'd felt in years. She made tea, sat on her couch, looked at Daniel's photo on the mantel. I did it, she told him. I stopped hiding. I stopped running. I remembered who I was before I lost you. The photo didn't answer, but Emma didn't need it to. She knew what Daniel would say. He'd say he was proud. He'd say she was Phoenix. He'd say she'd finally come home to herself. Emma opened her laptop and composed an email to Jack. I accept your offer to join the Advanced Emergency Response Program. I also want to work with the Carter Foundation, helping veterans and their families. Daniel would want that. I want that. It's time to turn our pain into purpose. Thank you for not giving up on me. Thank you for keeping your promise to him. And thank you for helping me keep mine. She hit send at 9:47 p.m. The reply came 2 minutes later. Welcome home, Phoenix. Daniel would be so proud. I know I am. Emma closed her laptop and walked to her bedroom. She took Daniel's medals and her own, untangled them carefully and placed them side by side on her dresser, where she could see them every day. Reminders of who she'd been, who she'd lost, who she was becoming. At 10:15 p.m., Emma's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is James. My parents helped me find your number. I hope that's okay. I wanted you to know that I've decided something, and I'm still going to college next year, still going to be a teacher like and I planned. But I'm also going to volunteer at the VA hospital on weekends. Because you saved my life, and now I want to help save others. You inspired me. Thank you. Emma read the message 3 times, tears streaming down her face. This was it. This was what rising from the ashes meant. Not just surviving, but inspiring others to live to fight, to care. She typed back, "You're going to be an amazing teacher and an even better person. Thank you for fighting to stay alive. You made all of it worth it." At 11:02 p.m., Emma lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about everything that had happened in the last 48 hours. She'd saved 13 lives. She'd nearly lost her career. She'd faced her past and her pain and come out the other side intact, more than intact, whole. For the first time since Daniel died, Emma felt whole. And tomorrow she would wake up and keep fighting, keep saving, keep being Phoenix, because that's what Phoenixes did. They burned, they died, they rose again, stronger every time. Emma returned to work 3 days later at 6:47 p.m. for her regular night shift, and the moment she walked through the ER doors, the applause started. Every nurse, every tech, every doctor who wasn't actively treating a patient stopped what they were doing and clapped. Some were crying. Diane was full-on sobbing. Emma froze her face burning. "Stop it. Please stop." "Not a chance," Diane said, pulling her into a crushing hug. "You're a hero whether you like it or not. I'm just trying to do my job. And you almost lost everything doing it." Diane pulled back, wiped her eyes. "You showed us what courage looks like. Let us celebrate that." But the celebration died fast when Emma saw who was waiting by the nurse's station. Dr. Marcus Hale stood there in street clothes, no white coat, no credentials hanging from his neck. His face was haggard, eyes red-rimmed like he hadn't slept in days. The ER went silent, everyone watching, waiting. Emma walked toward him slowly. "Dr. Hale, I need to talk to you." His voice was rough, broken. "Please." Emma glanced at Diane, who looked ready to physically remove him from the building. "It's okay," Emma said quietly. "Give us a minute." They walked to an empty exam room. Hale closed the door behind them, and for a long moment, he just stood there, staring at the floor. "I'm sorry," he finally said. The words came out strangled, like they were being torn from his throat. "I'm so sorry, Emma, for everything." Emma crossed her arms. "What do you want me to say?" "Nothing. I don't deserve anything from you." Hale's hand shook. "I've been a doctor for 30 years, and somewhere along the way I forgot why I became one. I forgot that it's about saving lives, not protecting myself, not avoiding lawsuits, not making sure I got home on time. People almost died because of you. They would have died. If you hadn't been there, they would have died, and it would have been my fault." Hale looked up, and Emma saw genuine anguish in his eyes. "I was scared. That night when the casualties started pouring in, I panicked. I knew I couldn't handle it, knew I was in over my head, and instead of asking for help, instead of doing my job, I hid. Why are you telling me this? Because you deserved better. The patients deserve better, and because I want you to know that I dropped the complaint. I called the board this morning and withdrew everything. I told them the truth about what happened." Emma's breath caught. "You did what?" "It won't fix what I did. It won't bring back the years I've wasted being a coward. But maybe it's a start." Hale's voice cracked. "I'm retiring, effective immediately. I can't practice medicine anymore, knowing that I'm the kind of doctor who abandons patients when they need me most." Emma should have felt vindicated, triumphant, but all she felt was sad. Sad for this broken man who'd let fear consume him until there was nothing left. "You could get help," she said quietly. "Talk to someone. Figure out why you're so afraid." "I already know why." Hale smiled bitterly. 23 years ago, I made a mistake in the OR. A patient died. It was my fault, my negligence, and I've spent every day since then terrified it would happen again. So I stopped taking risks, stopped pushing myself, started hiding behind protocols and lawyers and anything that would protect me from having to make hard decisions." He looked at Emma with something like envy. "You're everything I used to be, everything I should have stayed." He left without another word, and Emma stood alone in the exam room processing what had just happened. Hale had destroyed himself with fear, had let one mistake define his entire career, his entire life, and Emma had almost done the same thing after losing Daniel. The difference was she'd found a way to fight back. At 8:23 p.m., Emma's first patient of the night arrived, a 67-year-old woman with chest pain, diaphoretic, clutching her left arm. Classic heart attack presentation. "Mrs. Chen, I'm Emma. I'm going to take care of you," Emma said, already moving, already assessing. "When did the pain start?" 20 minutes ago, I thought it was indigestion. Mrs. Chen's face was gray, her breathing labored. Emma called out orders as she worked. EKG, aspirin, nitroglycerin, IV, access. The team moved around her like a well-oiled machine. The new attending physician, Dr. Raymond Torres, who'd come from County General, the night of the disaster, stood back and watched Emma work with approval in his eyes. STEMI, Emma announced, reading the EKG. She needs the cath lab now. Dr. Torres nodded. Call cardiology. Tell them we're coming up. Within 12 minutes, Mrs. Chen was on her way to surgery. She lived because Emma had recognized the signs, immediately acted fast, didn't hesitate. Dr. Torres pulled Emma aside afterward. That was textbook. You ran that code like you've been doing it for decades. I have been doing it for decades. I can see that, Torres smiled. Admiral Carter told me about the new program, about you being the first candidate. I think it's exactly what this hospital needs. At 10:16 p.m., Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Jack. Can you meet me at County General tomorrow at 10 a.m.? There's someone I want you to meet, someone who needs Phoenix. Emma stared at the message. Phoenix, that name still felt foreign, like putting on a uniform that didn't quite fit anymore. But maybe that was the point. Maybe she had to grow into it again. She texted back, I'll be there. At 11:34 p.m., a familiar face walked into the ER. Thomas Reed, the retired firefighter who'd been injured in the chemical plant explosion. He was walking now, favoring his left side, but walking. Alive. He saw Emma and his entire face lit up. Nurse Walker, I was hoping you'd be here. Emma rushed over. Mr. Reed, what are you doing out of bed? You should still be admitted. They discharged me this morning. Clean bill of health, thanks to you. Thomas reached into his jacket and pulled out a photograph. I wanted to give you this. You said I reminded you of someone, and I realized afterward you probably meant my daughter, Sarah. He handed Emma the photo. A young woman in navy scrubs smiling at the camera standing in front of a field hospital. She looked so much like Emma had at that age. Bright-eyed, hopeful, ready to save the world. She died 6 years ago, Thomas said, his voice thick. Suicide. She was a Navy corpsman, came back from deployment with PTSD. We tried to get her help, but the system failed her. She fell through the cracks. Emma's hands trembled, holding the photo. Another one. Another veteran lost to wounds the world couldn't see. When you were working on me that night, I was barely conscious, but I heard your voice. Thomas continued. You sounded just like her. Strong, determined, refusing to give up. And I thought if Sarah had someone like you fighting for her, maybe she'd still be here. Mr. Reed, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry, use it. Thomas took Emma's hands photographed between them. Sarah loved being a corpsman, loved saving lives, but when she came home and needed saving herself, there was nobody. The Admiral told me about the program you're building, about helping veterans transition. That's Sarah's legacy. That's what she would have wanted. Emma looked at the photo again, at this young woman who died the same way Daniel had, lost, alone, unable to find a way back from the darkness. I'll fight for them, Emma whispered. For Sarah, for Daniel, for every veteran who comes home and can't find their way. I promise, Thomas hugged her tight. Thank you for being the person my daughter needed. After he left, Emma stood in the hallway holding Sarah's photograph, tears streaming down her face. Diane found her there at 11:52 p.m. Emma, what's wrong? Emma showed her the photo, told her about Sarah, about Thomas, about the promise she just made. You can't save everyone, Diane said gently. You know that, right? I know, but I can save some, and some is better than none. At 1:18 a.m., the ER doors burst open and paramedics rushed in with a trauma. Male early 20s gunshot wound to the abdomen, bleeding heavily. Gang shooting, the lead paramedic shouted. 2 victims. This one's critical. The other's coming right behind us. Emma ran to the trauma bay, gloved up, started working. The young man was unconscious, his abdomen rigid with internal bleeding. He needed surgery immediately. Dr. Torres was already there assessing barking orders. Type and cross for 6 units. Get OR on the phone. We need a surgeon now. Emma applied pressure to the wound, watching blood seep between her fingers despite the gauze. Too much blood. The kid was exsanguinating right in front of them. BP's dropping, the monitoring nurse called out. 70/40. Hang another unit of O-negative, Torres ordered. Emma, Can you get a second IV? Emma grabbed the catheter, found a vein in the patient's other arm, placed the line with practiced efficiency. Her hands were steady, even though her heart was racing. This was what she was built for. These moments when seconds mattered, when one wrong move meant death. The second gunshot victim arrived at 1:24 a.m., younger, maybe 19, shot in the chest. He was screaming, conscious, terrified. "I don't want to die. Please don't let me die." Emma wanted to go to him, but she couldn't leave her patient. Dr. Torres made the call. Emma switched with Rodriguez. "I need you on the chest wound." Emma transferred care and moved to the second bay. The young man grabbed her wrist the moment she approached. "Am I going to die?" Emma looked him in the eyes. "Not if I have anything to say about it." "What's your name?" "Marcus. Marcus Johnson." "Okay, Marcus, I'm Emma, and I'm going to take care of you. I need you to trust me. Can you do that?" He nodded, tears streaming down his face. The bullet had entered his left chest, possibly nicking the lung. Emma could hear decreased breath sounds on that side. She needed to place a chest tube, decompress the lung, keep him stable until surgery. "Dr. Torres, he's got a pneumothorax. I need to tube him." "Do it," Torres called from the other bay. "I'm tied up here." Emma prepped the site, numbed the area with local anesthetic, made the incision. Marcus was crying, squeezing her other hand so hard it hurt. "Stay with me, Marcus. You're doing great. Just breathe." She inserted the tube, felt the resistance push through, connected the drainage system. Air and blood rushed out. Marcus's oxygen saturation immediately improved. "There you go. You're okay. You're going to be okay." At 1:47 a.m., both patients were stabilized and on their way to surgery. Emma stood at the sink, washing blood off her hands, watching it swirl down the drain. Two young men shot over something stupid, probably drugs or territory or some gang nonsense that didn't matter. Both might live, both might die. All Emma could do was give them a chance. Dr. Torres came up beside her, started washing his own hands. "You're wasted in a regular ER," he said. "You should be teaching, training the next generation." "Maybe that's what the new program will be." "It should be, Waymei. We need more nurses like you, more people who don't freeze when everything goes to hell." At 3:32 a.m., during a rare quiet moment, Emma sat in the break room with coffee. She was too tired to drink. Her phone showed missed calls from reporters, interview requests, people wanting her story. She ignored all of them. But there was one email that caught her attention, from County General's HR department. Subject: Advanced Emergency Response Nurse Program. Orientation details. Emma opened it with shaking hands. The program started in 2 weeks, 12 weeks of intensive training covering advanced procedures, trauma management, crisis leadership. Upon completion, she'd be credentialed to perform procedures that normally required a physician, but only during mass casualty events or when physician oversight was unavailable. It was everything she'd done that night at the chemical plant explosion, but legal, sanctioned, supported. The email ended with a note from Jack. "This is your legacy, Emma, yours and Daniel's. Make us proud. You already have." At 6:53 a.m., Emma's shift ended. She walked out of the ER and into morning light, exhausted but alive. A news van was parked in the lot. A reporter rushed toward her with a cameraman. "Ms. Walker, just a few questions about the hero nurse story." Emma held up her hand. "I'm not a hero. I'm a nurse. There's a difference." "But you saved 13 lives. You risked everything." "Every nurse risks everything every day. We just don't usually make the news for it." Emma started walking toward her car. The reporter followed. "What would you say to other nurses who might face similar situations?" Emma stopped, turned around, looked directly at the camera. "I'd say trust your training, trust your instincts. And when you're faced with a choice between following protocol and saving a life, choose the life. Always choose the life. The paperwork can wait. The lawsuits can wait. The bureaucracy can wait. But that patient, that human being in front of you who's dying, they can't wait. So you fight for them, even if it costs you, especially if it costs you, because that's what we signed up for." The reporter stared at her, speechless. Emma got in her car and drove away. At 9:47 a.m., Emma walked into County General Hospital, still in her scrubs from the night shift, running on fumes and determination. Jack was waiting in the lobby. "You look like hell," he said with a slight smile. "Night shift, 2 gunshot wounds, 1 MI, and a partridge in a pear tree. And you still came. That's the Emma I remember." Jack gestured toward the elevator. Come on, there's someone upstairs who needs to meet you. They rode to the fourth floor in silence. Emma could feel Jack's tension, his nervous energy. Whoever they were meeting mattered to him. He led her to a private room at the end of the hall. Outside the door, he stopped. Her name is Rachel Martinez. She's 26, former Army medic, 3 deployments. She came home 6 months ago and she's been struggling. Depression, survivor's guilt. She tried to kill herself 2 weeks ago. Jack's voice was tight. Her family called me, asked if the foundation could help. I've been working with her, but she's resistant. Won't talk to therapists, won't engage. She thinks her life is over because she can't be a medic anymore. Emma's chest tightened. Why are you telling me this? Because you're proof that life doesn't end when you come home from war, that you can find purpose again, that the skills you learned in combat can save lives in civilian medicine. Jack looked at her intently. She needs to see what's possible. She needs Phoenix. Emma wanted to run. She wasn't qualified for this. She wasn't a therapist or a counselor. She was just a nurse who'd managed to survive her own darkness. But then she thought about Sarah Reed, about Daniel, about all the veterans who came home and couldn't find their way back. Okay, she whispered. I'll try. Jack opened the door. The room was dim, curtains drawn. A young woman sat in the bed staring at nothing. Her wrists were bandaged. Her eyes were hollow, empty of everything except pain. Rachel, this is Emma Walker, Jack said gently. She's a Navy corpsman veteran. I thought you two might want to talk. Rachel didn't even look at them. I don't want to talk. That's okay, my boy, Emma said, pulling up a chair. I'll talk. You just listen. Jack left them alone, closing the door quietly. Emma sat in silence for a full minute, gathering her thoughts. Then she started talking. 8 years ago, my husband killed himself in a VA hospital bathroom. He was a Marine, 3 deployments. Good man, strong man, but the war broke something in him that we couldn't fix. And when he died, it broke something in me. Rachel's eyes flickered toward her just for a second. I spent 8 years hiding from that pain, Emma continued, working night shifts, avoiding people, pretending I was fine. And then 3 nights ago, I was forced to make impossible decisions. I had to choose between my career and saving lives. I had to perform procedures I wasn't authorized to do. I had to be the person I was in combat, even though I'd spent 8 years trying to bury her. What happened? Rachel's voice was hoarse, barely audible. I saved 13 people. I also almost lost my license, my job, my freedom. But I didn't lose myself. For the first time since Daniel died, I remembered who I was, who I am. Rachel looked at her directly now. Who are you? I'm Phoenix. That was my call sign. I'd earned it by refusing to give up on 3 Marines who everyone else said were too far gone. I worked on them under enemy fire. I kept them alive when it should have been impossible. Emma leaned forward. You know what it's like, Rachel. You've been there. You've made those impossible decisions. You've saved lives in situations that would make most people freeze. That was then. This is different. Is it? You think because you're home because you're not wearing a uniform anymore, those skills don't matter, that you don't matter? I can't do it anymore. Rachel's voice broke. I can't be responsible for people's lives. I can't make those decisions. Every time I close my eyes, I see the ones I couldn't save. The Marine who bled out in my arms. The kid who stepped on an IED right in front of me. I see their face and I can't breathe. Emma reached out slowly, carefully took Rachel's hand. I see them too. Every single one. The ones I couldn't save. They haunt me, but you know who else I see? The ones I did save. The ones who are alive right now, living their lives because I refuse to give up. And that matters, Rachel. That matters more than the failures. How do you live with it? By honoring them, by using what they taught me to save others, by refusing to let their deaths be meaningless. Emma squeezed Rachel's hand. Admiral Carter is starting a program, training combat medics to work in civilian emergency medicine, helping veterans like us find purpose again. I want you to join. Rachel laughed bitterly. I can't even get out of bed without having a panic attack. You think I can work in an ERR? Not yet, but you can, with help, with training, with people who understand what you're going through. Emma pulled out Sarah Reed's photograph, the one Thomas had given her. This was Sarah, Navy corpsman. She came home and couldn't find her way back. She killed herself 6 years ago. Her father told me that if she'd had someone fighting for her, someone who understood, maybe she'd still be alive. Rachel stared at the photograph, tears streaming down her face. I can't save Sarah, Emma said. I can't save Daniel. But I can fight for you. I can show you that there's a way forward, that your life isn't over, that you can still make a difference. Emma's voice was fierce, now urgent. You're a combat medic, Rachel. You're trained to save lives in the worst conditions imaginable. The world needs that. We need that. Don't let the war take that away from you. Rachel broke down, completely sobbing into her hands. Emma moved to the bed, held her while she cried. Let her release 8 months of grief and pain and guilt. I'm so tired, Rachel whispered. I'm so tired of fighting. I know, but you don't have to fight alone anymore. That's what I'm trying to tell you. You have us now. You have the foundation. You have Jack. You have me. Emma pulled back, looked Rachel in the eyes. Let us help you, please. At 11:23 a.m., Jack returned to find Emma and Rachel talking quietly. Rachel's face was still tear-streaked, but there was something different in her eyes. A spark, small, fragile, but there. She's going to try, Rachel said to Jack. Emma said there's a program. I'll try. Jack's face crumpled with relief. Thank you. Thank you, Rachel. After Rachel fell asleep, exhausted from the emotional purging, Emma and Jack stood in the hallway. You reached her, Jack said. I've been trying for 2 weeks and couldn't get through. You did it in an hour. She needed to hear from someone who's been where she is, someone who survived it. You did more than survive it, Emma. You're thriving, and now you're helping others do the same. Jack's eyes were bright. This is what the program should be, not just medical training, peer support, veterans helping veterans. Then that's what we'll build. At 12:47 p.m., Emma finally made it home. She was so exhausted she could barely stand, but her mind was racing. She thought about Rachel, about Sarah, about all the veterans struggling to find purpose after war. She thought about the program starting in 2 weeks, about the responsibility she was taking on, about stepping fully into the role of Phoenix instead of hiding from it. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer. Hello? Emma Walker. A woman's voice. Official sounding. This is Jennifer Brooks from the State Nursing Board. I'm calling regarding a complaint that was filed against your license. Emma's heart stopped. I thought Dr. Hale withdrew his complaint. He did. This is a different complaint, filed by a patient's family member from the chemical plant incident. Which patient? I'm not at liberty to say, but the complaint alleges that you performed procedures outside your scope of practice and endangered their family member's life. We're opening a formal investigation. You'll need to appear before the board in 3 weeks. Emma couldn't breathe. But everyone survived. I saved them. That's not the issue. The issue is whether you violated nursing protocols and state law. I'm sorry, Ms. Walker. I'm required to investigate all complaints. You'll receive official notification by mail. The line went dead. Emma sat down hard on her couch, the phone slipping from her fingers. Another investigation. Another fight. Just when she thought it was over, her phone buzzed with a text from Jack. Just heard about the nursing board complaint. Don't panic. We'll fight this together. You're not alone. But Emma felt alone, completely, utterly alone. Because despite everything, despite the board's decision at St. Bethany, despite the new program, someone was still trying to destroy her for saving lives. She picked up Daniel's photo from the mantel. I don't know how much more I can take, she whispered. I'm trying, I'm fighting, but they keep coming after me. The photo didn't answer, but Emma didn't need it to. She knew what Daniel would say. Keep fighting, Phoenix. Keep flying. The fire only makes you stronger. Emma set the photo down, wiped her tears, and opened her laptop. If they wanted a fight, she'd give them one. She'd faced enemy fire. She'd survived losing her husband. She'd drilled a hole in a dying boy's skull. She could handle the nursing board. She had to. Because 13 people were alive because of her. Rachel Martinez had hope again because of her. And somewhere out there, more veterans needed Phoenix. So Emma would rise, again and again and again, until the ashes couldn't hold her anymore. The official letter from the State Nursing Board arrived at 9:14 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, 3 days before Emma was scheduled to start the Advanced Emergency Response Program. She stood in her kitchen, holding the envelope, her hands trembling so badly she could barely tear it open. Formal notice of investigation into license number 8473992, Emma Catherine Walker. Allegations of practicing medicine without a license, performing surgical procedures outside scope of practice, endangering patient safety through reckless disregard of established protocols. The hearing was scheduled for 2 weeks from today. Emma had 2 weeks to prepare a defense or lose everything she'd spent 20 years building. Her phone rang. "Jack, did you get the letter?" he asked without preamble. "Just opened it." "I'm coming over. Don't make any decisions until I get there." Emma wanted to argue, but she didn't have the energy. She sat at her kitchen table staring at the letter, reading the same words over and over until they stopped making sense. Jack arrived at 9:47 a.m. with a briefcase and a determination that filled Emma's small apartment like a physical force. "We need to find out who filed this complaint," he said, spreading documents across her table. "The board won't tell us, but I have contacts, people who owe me favors." "Does it matter who filed it? The allegations are the same." "It matters because we need to understand the motivation. Is this a genuine concern about patient safety, or is it someone with an agenda?" Jack's eyes were hard. "My money's on agenda." At 10:33 a.m. Jack's phone rang. He answered, listened, his face growing darker with each passing second. "You're certain," he said finally. "Absolutely certain." He hung up and looked at him, and it was something between fury and disbelief. The complaint was filed by Dr. Marcus Hale's attorney on behalf of an anonymous client who claims to be a family member of one of the patients you treated. Emma felt like she'd been punched. But Hale withdrew his complaint. He apologized. Hale withdrew his complaint with the hospital board. "This is different. This goes to the state. And if you lose your nursing license, you can't participate in the new program. You can't work in any hospital. You're finished." Jack's voice was tight with controlled rage. "This is revenge, Emma. Pure and simple. Hale couldn't destroy you through official channels, so he's doing it through the back door." "Can he do that, file a complaint on behalf of someone else?" "Technically, anyone can file a complaint with the nursing board. They don't have to be directly involved. They just have to claim knowledge of wrongdoing." Jack started pacing. "But we can fight this. We have witness statements, medical records, outcome data. Every patient you treated survived and is recovering. That's our defense." "What if it's not enough?" Jack stopped pacing, looked at her directly. "Then we make it enough. Emma, I didn't pull you out of the darkness just to watch you get destroyed by a coward with a lawyer. We're going to win this." At 2:15 p.m., Emma met with an attorney Jack had recommended, Catherine Mills, a 50-something woman with steel gray hair and eyes that missed nothing. "I've reviewed your case," Catherine said, spreading files across her conference table. "The good news is every patient survived and is recovering well. The bad news is you openly admit to performing procedures outside your scope of practice. I saved their lives." "I know, and that's our angle. Necessity defense. You acted to prevent imminent death or serious bodily harm when no other qualified person was available." Catherine pulled out a legal pad. "But we need more than your word. We need expert witnesses. Doctors who will testify that what you did was medically appropriate given the circumstances." Dr. Patricia Chen already said she'd testify. "Good, we need more. We need the trauma surgeon who took over your patients. We need the paramedics who brought them in. We need a medical expert who can explain why delay would have been fatal." Catherine looked at Emma seriously. "And we need you to be prepared for them to attack your character, your judgment, your entire career. They're going to paint you as a rogue nurse who thinks she's a doctor. Can you handle that?" Emma thought about Daniel, about 8 years of hiding, about finally finding herself again only to face losing everything. "I can handle it." "Good, because this hearing isn't just about your license. It's about setting a precedent. If they rule against you, every nurse in the state will be terrified to make critical decisions in emergencies. But if we win, we create legal protection for nurses who act in good faith during crisis situations." Catherine smiled slightly. "No pressure." At 6:47 p.m., Emma showed up for her shift at St. Bethany. The ER was packed as always. Diane took one look at her face and pulled her into the break room. "I heard about the nursing board. Everyone's heard." "Great, so everyone knows I might lose my license. Everyone knows you're being targeted by a vindictive doctor who can't accept that you're a better person than he'll ever be." Diane gripped Emma's shoulders. We're all behind you, every nurse in this hospital. We're writing statements, gathering evidence, doing whatever it takes. You could get in trouble. Hale could come after you too. Let him try. I've been a nurse for 32 years. I've seen a lot of doctors come and go. And the one thing I've learned is that the good ones support their nurses and the bad ones try to destroy them. Hale's a bad one. You're a good one. I know which side I'm on. At 8:22 p.m. Emma was working on a patient with diabetic ketoacidosis when her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Stop what you're doing or it gets worse. Withdraw from the program and drop this whole thing. Last warning. Emma's hands went cold. She showed the text to Diane. That's a threat. You need to report this to the police. Report what an anonymous text. They won't do anything. Emma, someone is trying to intimidate you. This is serious. But before Emma could respond, another text came through. This one had a photo attached. Emma opened it and her blood turned to ice. It was a picture of her apartment building, taken recently, maybe today. The message below read, I know where you live. Emma's hands shook so badly, she nearly dropped her phone. Diane grabbed it, looked at the photo, and her face went white. We're calling the police, right now. Detective Ryan Morris arrived at the hospital at 9:03 p.m. He listened to Emma's explanation, examined the text, took screenshots. This is harassment and intimidation, he said, possibly stalking. Do you have any idea who sent these? I'm guessing Dr. Hale or someone working for him. Can you prove that? No. Morris sighed. Without proof, there's not much I can do except file a report and increase patrols around your building. I'd recommend changing your daily routine. Vary your schedule, be aware of your surroundings, and if you receive any more threats, contact me immediately. After he left, Emma stood in the break room trying to process what was happening. Someone wanted her scared enough to give up, to walk away from the program, from the hearing, from everything. At 10:47 p.m., Jack called. I just heard about the texts. Are you okay? No, I'm terrified. Good. That means you're smart. Jack's voice was grim. But don't let fear win, Emma. That's what they want. They want you scared and compliant. What if they hurt me? What if this is more than just threats? Then we make sure you're protected. I'm hiring security, someone to watch your apartment, escort you to and from work. This is non-negotiable. Jack, I can't afford. The foundation is paying for it. Consider it part of your employment package. Jack paused. Emma, I've dealt with people like this before. Bullies who use intimidation because they've lost every other way to win. But they're cowards. They operate in shadows. The moment you shine a light on them, they scatter. At 11:58 p.m., Emma was checking vitals on a post-op patient when the ER doors burst open. Rachel Martinez rushed in, her face panicked, her breathing rapid. Emma, I need Emma Walker. Emma ran over. Rachel, what's wrong? I'm having a panic attack. I can't breathe. I thought I was doing better, but then I was alone in my apartment and the walls started closing in and I couldn't. Rachel was hyperventilating, her eyes wide with terror. Emma guided her to an empty exam room, sat her down, grabbed a paper bag. Breathe with me, Rachel. In through your nose, out through your mouth. Slow, steady. You're safe. You're here with me. You're safe. It took 15 minutes to talk Rachel down from the panic attack. When her breathing finally steadied, she looked at Emma with shame in her eyes. I'm sorry, I shouldn't have come here. I just didn't know where else to go. Don't apologize. You did exactly the right thing. Emma sat beside her. Rachel, recovery isn't linear. You're going to have good days and bad days. The important thing is that you reached out instead of doing something destructive. I almost didn't. I was standing in my bathroom with a bottle of pills, thinking how easy it would be to just end it all. But then I thought about what you said, about fighting, about purpose, and I got in my car and came here instead. Emma's chest tightened. I'm so glad you did. I want to live, Emma, I do, but I don't know how to get from here to there. From this broken, terrified person to someone who can function again. One day at a time, 1 hour at a time, sometimes 1 minute at a time. Emma took Rachel's hand. And you don't do it alone. You have me. You have Jack. You have the program starting next week. You have people fighting for you now. Rachel started crying. What if I'm too broken? What if I can't be fixed? You're not broken. You're wounded. There's a difference. Broken can't be repaired. Wounded can heal. Emma thought about her own journey, her own wounds. I was wounded too, for 8 years. And I'm still healing, but I'm alive. I'm fighting. I'm making a difference. You can too. At 1:33 a.m. after Rachel had been admitted for overnight observation, and Emma had spent an hour talking to the on-call psychiatrist about Rachel's treatment plan, Emma finally took a break. She sat in the break room with coffee she didn't drink and stared at the wall. Her phone buzzed, another text from the unknown number. Cute. You think you can save everyone. Let's see how you feel when you can't save yourself. Emma's hands clenched around the phone. Enough. She'd had enough of being scared enough, of being threatened enough, of letting bullies control her life. She typed back, "Do your worst. I'm not backing down." The response came immediately. "You'll regret this." Emma turned off her phone and went back to work. At 6:47 a.m., Emma's shift ended. A man was waiting in the parking lot beside her car. Tall, muscular, wearing a security company uniform. "Ms. Walker, I'm Marcus Chen. Admiral Carter hired me to provide security. I'll be escorting you home and maintaining surveillance on your apartment." Emma was too exhausted to argue. She let Marcus follow her home, watched him park across from her building, and stumbled into her apartment at 7:18 a.m. She collapsed into bed without even changing clothes and fell into a deep, dreamless sleep. The sound of breaking glass woke her at 2:47 p.m. Emma jerked upright, heart hammering. Someone was in her apartment. She grabbed her phone, but before she could dial 911, her bedroom door flew open. A man stood there, face covered by a ski mask, something in his hand. "You should have listened," he said. Emma screamed. The man lunged forward. Emma rolled off the bed, grabbed the lamp from her nightstand, swung it hard. It connected with his shoulder. He grunted, stumbled back. Emma ran for the door. The man grabbed her arm, yanked her back. She twisted, brought her knee up hard into his groin. He doubled over. Emma shoved him away and sprinted for the front door. Marcus Chen burst through the door at the same moment, gun drawn. "On the ground!" Now, the intruder ran for the broken window, dove through it. By the time Marcus reached the window, the man was gone, disappearing into an alley. Emma stood in her living room, shaking violently. Marcus called the police while Emma tried to process what had just happened. Someone had broken into her home. Someone had threatened her physically. This was real. This wasn't just intimidation. Someone wanted to hurt her. Detective Morris arrived at 3:22 p.m. with a forensics team. "We'll dust for prints, check for DNA, canvass the area for witnesses," he said. "But Ms. Walker, you can't stay here. It's not safe." "I don't have anywhere else to go." "Yes, you do." Jack's voice came from the doorway. He must have been called by Marcus. "You're staying with me. My place has security, gates, cameras. No one's getting near you there." Emma wanted to argue, but she couldn't. She was terrified, exhausted, out of options. She packed a bag at 4:15 p.m. and left her apartment, possibly for the last time. Jack's house was in a gated community 30 minutes from the hospital. Big, secure, completely opposite of Emma's small apartment. He showed her to a guest room and left her alone to decompress. Emma sat on the edge of the bed, staring at nothing. Someone had broken into her home, had threatened her, had tried to hurt her, all because she'd saved lives. Her phone rang at 5:47 p.m. Catherine Mills, her attorney. "Emma, we have a problem. The nursing board moved up your hearing. It's tomorrow at 10 a.m. Emma's heart stopped. "Tomorrow? That's impossible. We're not ready." "I know, but they claim they received additional evidence that requires immediate review. My guess is whoever's behind this is trying to catch us off guard." Catherine's voice was tight with anger. "Can you be there? I'll be there." "Good. Bring everything we've discussed. Medical records, witness statements, your service records. We're going to war tomorrow, Emma. Be ready." After they hung up, Emma sat in silence for a long time. Then she walked downstairs and found Jack in his study. "The hearing's tomorrow," she said. Jack looked up from his computer. "I know. Catherine called me too. I'm going to lose. They're moving too fast, pushing too hard. They want me off balance." "Then we don't give them what they want." Jack came around the desk. "Emma, I've been in combat, real combat. And you know what I learned? The enemy always has a plan. They always think they know how you'll react. But the moment you do something unexpected, the moment you refuse to play by their rules, that's when you win." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we go on the offensive. Tomorrow at that hearing, we don't just defend you. We attack. We expose Hale. We expose whoever's behind these threats. We make them wish they'd never come after Phoenix. At 8:33 p.m. Emma sat at Jack's dining table surrounded by documents. Her service records, medical charts from the night of the explosion, witness statements from every nurse who'd been there, photos of the 13 patients all alive, all recovering. Jack worked beside her, organizing evidence, preparing arguments, building their case like a military operation. "Tell me about Daniel," he said suddenly. Emma looked up surprised. "What? Tell me about Daniel. Not the Marine, not the casualty. Tell me about your husband." Emma's throat tightened. "Why?" "Because tomorrow they're going to try to make you emotional. They're going to attack you, and you need to be centered, grounded. And the only way to do that is to face what you've been running from." Jack's eyes were kind. "Tell me about him." So Emma did. She told Jack about meeting Daniel during basic training, about falling in love during deployment, about the way he laughed, the way he held her, the way he believed in her even when she didn't believe in herself. She told him about the good years before the war broke him, about watching him disappear into darkness, about the guilt of not being able to save him. "He gave you the name Phoenix," Jack said quietly when she finished. "During a firefight in Helmand Province, 3 Marines down, everyone else taking cover. I ran out there and started working on them." Daniel said later that he watched me burn through fear like it was nothing. Said I was fire and life and hope all at once. Called me Phoenix because I brought people back from the ashes. "And then he died and you tried to bury Phoenix with him." Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I thought if I could just be small enough, quiet enough, invisible enough, I wouldn't hurt anymore. Wouldn't feel anything. But that's not how grief works. It doesn't get smaller. It gets bigger until it consumes you." Jack leaned forward. "Unless you use it, transform it, let it fuel you instead of destroy you. Is that what you did after Daniel died, after you failed to save him?" Jack flinched but didn't look away. "Yes, I started the foundation. I dedicated my life to helping veterans. Not because it fixed my guilt, but because it gave my guilt purpose. And now you're helping me do the same. Now we're helping each other." Jack smiled slightly. "Daniel brought us together, Emma. Even in death, he's still taking care of the people he loved." At 11:47 p.m., Emma lay in the guest bed staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow, everything would be decided. Tomorrow, she'd either keep her license and her future or lose everything. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Different from before. "I know what they're doing to you. I can help. Meet me at County General 4th floor waiting room, 6 a.m. Come alone. Trust no one else." Emma stared at the message. It could be a trap. Could be whoever broke into her apartment. Could be another threat. Or it could be someone who actually wanted to help. At 5:47 a.m., Emma slipped out of Jack's house without waking him. She left a note saying she needed to clear her head before the hearing. Not a lie exactly. She drove to County General and took the elevator to the 4th floor. The waiting room was empty except for one person. Dr. Marcus Hale. Emma froze. Every instinct screamed at her to run. But Hale looked different. Broken. Hollow. He stood when he saw her. "Thank you for coming," he said, his voice hoarse. "You sent those texts. You broke into my apartment." "What?" No, Hale looked horrified. "Emma, I sent you that message because I found out who's behind all of this, who's really trying to destroy you." Emma's heart pounded. "Who?" "My ex-wife, Linda Hale. She's a hospital administrator at Mercy General. When I told her I was retiring, that I'd withdrawn my complaint against you, she went ballistic. Said I was destroying our reputation, our legacy, everything we'd built. I tried to explain that you saved lives, that I was wrong, but she wouldn't listen." Hale's hand shook. "She filed the nursing board complaint without telling me. She hired someone to intimidate you. And yesterday when I confronted her about it, she said she'd do whatever it took to make sure you never worked as a nurse again." Emma couldn't breathe. "Why, because in her mind you made me look weak. You showed that a nurse could do what a doctor couldn't. And she spent 30 years protecting my reputation, covering my mistakes, making sure no one ever saw how scared I was. Your courage threatened everything she'd built." "Where is she now?" "I don't know. But Emma, you need to know something else. She's planning to testify at your hearing today. She's going to present herself as an anonymous family member of one of the patients. She's going to lie and say you endangered her loved one's life." Emma felt sick. How do I stop her? You expose her. You make her lies public. I'll testify if you need me to. I'll tell the board everything. What I did that night, what she's done since, all of it. Hale looked at her with desperate eyes. I know I don't deserve your trust. I know I've been a coward my entire career. But let me do this one right thing. Let me help you stop her. At 9:47 a.m., Emma walked into the nursing board hearing room with Jack on one side, Catherine Mills on the other, and Dr. Marcus Hale trailing behind them. The board members sat at a long table, 7 stern faces all watching Emma with expressions that ranged from skeptical to hostile. And sitting in the witness section was a woman Emma had never met. Mid-50s, perfectly styled hair, expensive suit. She looked calm, composed, ready. Linda Hale. Catherine approached the board chair. Before we begin, I'd like to submit additional evidence and call an additional witness. The chair frowned. This hearing was scheduled for specific allegations. We can't. The additional evidence directly relates to the complaint filed against Ms. Walker, Catherine interrupted. And the witness has information about who filed it and why. The board members conferred quietly. Finally, the chair nodded. Proceed. Catherine called Dr. Marcus Hale to testify. Linda's face went white. She stood abruptly, but security blocked her exit. Marcus took the stand and told everything. His negligence that night, his pattern of avoiding responsibility, his ex-wife's obsession with protecting his reputation, her campaign to destroy Emma. Linda Hale filed his complaint with this board under false pretenses. Marcus said, his voice steady despite the tremor in his hands. She claimed to be a family member of one of the patients Ms. Walker treated. That's a lie. She has no connection to any of those patients. She filed it purely to punish Ms. Walker for exposing my failures. The board chair turned to Linda. Is this true? Linda stood, her composure cracking. He's lying. He's trying to protect her because he's weak, because she's made him look incompetent. You made yourself look incompetent, Marcus shot back. You spent 30 years covering for me, enabling me, letting me hide from my responsibilities. And when someone finally had the courage to do what I should have done, you tried to destroy her for it. The room erupted in chaos. The board members were conferring urgently. Linda was shouting about defamation and lies. Catherine was presenting phone records, text message logs, evidence of Linda's harassment campaign. And Emma just stood there watching her entire future hanging in the balance. At 11:22 a.m., the board chair called for order. We're going to take a 1-hour recess to review this new evidence. All parties will remain available. The recess felt like an eternity. Emma sat in the hallway with Jack, unable to speak, unable to think. At 12:31 p.m., they were called back in. The board chair looked at Emma, her expression unreadable. Ms. Walker, we've reviewed all the evidence presented today. The original complaint, the witness statements, the medical records, and the new information regarding the complaint's origins. Emma couldn't breathe. We find that the complaint was filed in bad faith by someone with no standing and no legitimate concern for patient safety. The complaint is dismissed. Emma's knees buckled. Jack caught her. Furthermore, the chair continued, we find that your actions on the night in question, while technically outside standard protocols, were medically appropriate given the circumstances. You acted to preserve life in a crisis situation with inadequate physician oversight. No disciplinary action will be taken against your license. The room spun. Emma couldn't process what she was hearing. However, the chair said, and Emma's heart stopped again. We want to make it clear that this ruling applies specifically to the extraordinary circumstances of that night. Nurses are expected to work within their scope of practice. This should not be interpreted as blanket approval for nurses to exceed their authority. Understood, Catherine said quickly. The chair looked at Emma directly. You showed remarkable courage and skill, Ms. Walker. The board appreciates your service and your dedication to patient care. Your license remains active without restriction. It was over. Emma had won. Linda Hale was escorted from the building by security still shouting threats. Marcus Hale approached Emma in the hallway. Thank you for letting me testify, he said quietly. I know it doesn't fix what I did, but maybe it's a start. Get help, Dr. Hale, real help. Talk to someone about the fear. Don't let it consume the rest of your life. He nodded and walked away, shoulders slumped, a broken man trying to find redemption. At 2:15 p.m., Emma stood outside County General with Jack, Catherine, and a crowd of reporters. Ms. Walker, how does it feel to have your license cleared? A reporter shouted. Emma thought about her answer, about Daniel and Phoenix and 8 years of hiding, about 13 saved lives and 1 attempted suicide intervention and a broken intruder and threatening texts, about everything she'd survived to get to this moment. It feels like I can finally breathe again, she said. Like I can finally be who I was always meant to be. What's next for you? I start the Advanced Emergency Response Program tomorrow. I'm going to help train other nurses with combat medical backgrounds to use their skills in civilian medicine. And I'm going to work with the Carter Foundation to support veterans transitioning home. Emma looked at Jack, smiled. I'm going to honor the people who saved me by saving others. That's what Phoenix does. At 4:47 p.m., Emma returned to Jack's house to pack her things. She was moving back to her apartment tomorrow. Security had been upgraded, new locks installed, cameras everywhere. She wouldn't be driven from her home by fear. Jack found her in the guest room folding clothes. You know you can stay as long as you need, he said. I know, but I need to go home. Face it. Own it. Daniel would be proud of you. I'm finally proud of me too. Emma looked at him. Thank you, Jack, for everything. For not giving up on me. For keeping your promise to him. Thank you for giving me the chance to keep it. For giving me purpose again. Jack's eyes were bright with unshed tears. You saved more than 13 lives that night, Emma. You saved mine too. At 7:33 p.m., Emma drove to the cemetery where Daniel was buried. She hadn't been there in 8 years, couldn't face it, but now she needed to. She stood at his grave with the setting sun painting the sky orange and pink. His headstone read, Daniel James Walker, Sergeant United States Marine Corps, beloved husband, gone but not forgotten. I did it, Emma whispered, kneeling down, touching the cold stone. I stopped hiding. I stopped running. I remembered who I was, who you always said I could be. The wind picked up, rustling through the trees. Emma closed her eyes and felt Daniel's presence like a physical thing. Not haunting, comforting. I'm going to help veterans now, people like you who came home and couldn't find their way. I'm going to make sure they have someone fighting for them, someone who understands. Emma's voice broke. I couldn't save you, baby, but I can save others, and I will. I promise you I will. She stayed until dark, talking to him, crying, laughing at memories she'd locked away for too long. When she finally left, she felt lighter, free. At 9:15 p.m., Emma returned to her apartment for the first time since the break-in. The broken window had been replaced, everything cleaned, but she could still feel the violation of someone invading her space. She walked through each room, reclaiming it. This was her home, her sanctuary, and no one would drive her out. Her phone buzzed at 9:47 p.m. A text from Rachel Martinez. I heard you won. I'm so proud of you. You showed me that fighting is worth it, that we can survive the darkness. Thank you for not giving up on me. See you at orientation tomorrow. We're going to do this together. Emma smiled through tears. Another text came in from James Morrison. Got discharged today. Heading home. Starting physical therapy next week. Doctor says full recovery expected. None of this would be possible without you. Thank you for being my guardian angel. You saved my life and gave me a future. I won't waste it. Then another, from Diane. Heard the news. We're celebrating at the hospital. Everyone's so proud. You're a legend now, Walker, whether you like it or not. See you when you come back to work. We miss you already. Then one from Dr. Patricia Chen. Board made the right call. Looking forward to working with you in the new program. We're going to change emergency medicine together. Welcome to the Team Phoenix. Emma sat on her couch reading message after message, feeling the weight of community, of purpose, of belonging. She'd denied herself for 8 years. At 11:02 p.m., she opened her laptop and started writing. Not a statement or a testimony or a defense. A mission statement for the new program. We are the ones who refuse to give up, who face impossible situations and make the hard calls, who carry the weight of life and death and keep moving forward. We are combat medics and corpsmen and nurses who've seen the worst humanity can do and still believe in saving lives. We are Phoenix, and we rise. The next morning at 8:47 a.m., Emma walked into County General for orientation. Jack was waiting with Rachel Martinez, Dr. Patricia Chen, and 5 other nurses with combat medical backgrounds. all of them looking nervous, hopeful, ready. "Welcome to the Advanced Emergency Response Program," Jack said, smiling at the group. "You're here because you've proven yourselves in the worst conditions imaginable. Now we're going to teach you how to use those skills to save lives in civilian medicine. Legally, safely, effectively." He looked at Emma. "Phoenix, would you like to say a few words?" Emma stood facing her fellow veterans. She saw herself in each of them. The fear, the hope, the desperate need for purpose. "8 years ago, I lost myself," she began. "I forgot who I was, what I was capable of. I hid from my pain and my power. But 3 weeks ago, I was forced to make impossible decisions, to be the person I was trained to be, and it saved 13 lives." She paused, looking each person in the eye. "You all have that same power, that same training, that same courage, and this program is going to help you use it. Not to replace doctors, but to fill the gaps when doctors aren't available. To be the last line of defense when everything goes wrong. To be Phoenix when people need miracles." Rachel raised her hand. "What if we fail? What if we can't do it? Then we help each other up and try again." Emma said firmly, "We're not alone anymore. None of us. We have this team, this program, each other. And together we're going to change the world, one saved life at a time." The orientation lasted until 5:33 p.m. When it ended, Emma walked out of County General into the golden light of early evening. Jack walked beside her. "You did good in there," he said. "Daniel would be proud." "I'm finally proud too." Emma looked up at the sky, watched clouds drift past, felt the wind on her face. "I spent 8 years in ashes, but I'm done burning. I'm ready to fly." "Then fly, Phoenix. The world needs you." Emma smiled, feeling something she hadn't felt in 8 years settle into her bones. Not just peace, not just purpose, wholeness. She was Emma Walker, trauma nurse, Navy corpsman, widow, survivor fighter. She was the woman who'd saved 13 lives in one impossible night, who'd faced her demons and won, who'd risen from grief and guilt to find purpose again. She was Phoenix, and phoenixes didn't burn forever. Eventually they spread their wings, caught fire one last time, and soared into the sky, burning brighter than ever before, impossible to ignore, impossible to stop, leaving trails of light for others to follow out of their own darkness. Emma had burned long enough. Now it was time to fly to light the way for veterans like Rachel, who were still trapped in ashes, to show them that rising was possible, that healing was real, that life after trauma could be more than just survival. It could be magnificent. And as Emma drove home that evening with the sun setting behind her and her future stretching out ahead like an open road, she knew with absolute certainty that she would never hide again, never diminish herself, never let fear win. Because she had finally remembered the truth that Daniel had seen in her from the beginning, the truth she'd buried with him but had clawed her way back to find. She wasn't just a nurse who'd saved some lives during a crisis. She was Phoenix, and phoenixes were born from fire, strengthened by flame, made eternal by the very thing that should have destroyed them. The ashes were behind her now, the sky was calling, and Emma Walker was finally ready to answer.